truth. They don't want you to know the truth.
All right. Peace, everybody. Sorry, y'all. Peace, everybody. I am trying to full screen this, and I'm not sure why it's not working. So just bear with me. I'll figure it out. Why can't I add to? Shoot. Oh, okay. Man, how do I take that off? Okay, sorry, got it. Yay! Okay, hold on, because we got to get in groove right now, y'all. So just a little snippet. Oh, you know what it is?
I can't hear it. Rosa, whatever you're playing, I don't think the audience can hear it. I've been having some gremlins with my tech too the last 2 days, so I feel you.
All right, peace. Polly, you can't hear me?
I can hear you. I just couldn't hear the music.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, peace, everybody. My name is Rosa Clemente. We with Disrupt the Chaos, sponsored by Cooperation Jackson. We have an amazing day, great guests. Like all the people you're going to see today are my comrades. When I need analysis, when all of it is too much, this is my fam. So I wanted today to show what real resistance looks like. And resistance doesn't always look like a march or a protest. There are millions of people in this country. I for sure know that people are doing the work, even if you don't hear about it. People are more in tune to where they're at now locally and what they can do. But the purpose of today is self-determination. And we need that more than ever. We need to understand that the chaos they're throwing is for us not to be prepared. That if they're willing to let down the people that actually voted for Trump, I mean, right? Not only are they not like us, they don't care about us. And I think some people are always still saying, like, let the courts handle it. Let the judges make rulings. We live in a democracy. Every vote matters. Actually, none of that matters anymore, right? And the Republican Party is doing, no matter what he does, they're going to be right lock and step. And the Democrats are completely chaotic. People are tired of it. I think what's going to come out of this is going to be a lot of local organizations scaling up and doing great work. And that you're not crazy. When people tell you that will never happen, everything people told us was never going to happen has happened. It's happening right now. So it's going to be an amazing day. So our first guest is Kali Akuno, co-founder, co-director of Cooperation Jackson. And I wanted him here to begin the day for our analysis. He's traveling around the country, around the world, and the work that Cooperation Jackson is doing. If you have not follow all of us on social media, follow the Build and Fight formula, because what Cooperation Jackson is doing too, I think, which is fantastic, Kali. We're not assuming everybody knows or has the kind of political nuance that some of us have. But what we do know is that it's a self-determining, not only geographical location, but also of people, and it's amazing to see like young people now also realizing like the work that they need to do. And lastly, all the folks on colleges and universities, professors are being fired, hiring freezes all over. People talk about Harvard coming through. Harvard didn't come through because the next day after the interview that the president of Harvard did, they shut down the DEI office and renamed it something else. So when we see a Columbia or a Columbia or Harvard, even Cornell. I went to Cornell University for my master's Africana Studies and Research in Ithaca, New York. Kalani, the artist, was supposed to perform for the biggest day that we have called Slope Day. And they canceled her like 3 days before, because Slope Day is on the 5th. Well, anyway, they canceled it. And she came even stronger. And I think she's one of the few artists. I've seen Macklemore and what he did to make sure the documentary of the encampments came out, but she doubled down. She's like, oh, well, I don't care. It's a genocide happening. I'm not going to be silent, and she's already been like castigated, trolled, horrible things about her. So, Kali, thank you so much for being on. How do we analyze and break down now that we're 101 days into his administration? But also, is your phone on?
There's a texting service on this thing. I can't turn it off, unfortunately. That's my phone. That's my computer, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, what's up, homie? Break it down.
Well, I mean, from my number one, good to be with you as always, and definitely glad we are doing this on May Day. I hope folks understand the historical significance of May Day, and even though most of the U.S. Labor movement abandoned this day in its roots, some time ago, it is essential that it was we got to give props where props is due, in that the kind of revitalization of it within the United States is largely due to migrant workers, right? From primarily Latin America, but also Africa and Asia, who brought the tradition, which is alive and well in most countries, even though it emerged here, in the 19th century. The tradition has been alive and well in most other places in the world where they have healthy working class organizations and structures who are keen on fighting back, and they brought that back and revived that. So we just need to give props and respect to that, and to step into that clearly in the here and now. To your question, anybody who's been following me Well, no, I would tell you that I think their plans are going great. They are right on schedule where they told us they wanted to be, and where they were aiming to be. And it is very essential that anybody who is listening to this, either now or in the future, get rid of the American exceptionalism in your mind and this thought that it cannot happen here. It has been happening here, and it is definitely accelerating in what is going on. And, the folks should fight for all of the complement of human rights that we have. But we should not assume that this regime is going to respect those human rights, because they don't respect constitutional rights. They don't respect the Constitution. They don't respect bourgeois order, and they are intending on eradicating it and smashing it bit by bit, piece by piece. And they are doing it in an accelerated fashion to set up, a fascist dictatorship. And it's not like Trump is hiding this at this stage of the game, right? It's not like he's playing it down. He spoke very clearly that he was going to crush any and all principal opposition, to his agenda when he went up to Michigan to speak for, the 100 days. So yeah, it's they are doing what they told us they were going to do. Project 2025, for folks who didn't get a chance to read it or didn't believe it. Most of what they are doing is clearly laid out there, and they're just doing it, on a clear and steady pace to basically keep various forces, on their toes, off balance, and to fragment solidarity, right? Because if you attack workers one week and then you attack queer folks another week, and folks are asking, well, who's coming to support me, or who's going to get my back? And folks don't feel like, well, y'all didn't show up for me. Why should I show up for you? I mean, they're playing this well. I think some of the positive signs is that folks are definitely starting to get in motion, question, and doing a little bit of pushback. But there's still way too much reliance on thinking that the courts are going to somehow curtail or rein in the power that he is amassing. They are not, right?
Yeah.
Congress definitely is not. And the courts, particularly the Supreme Court, at the end of the day, is not up to that challenge, because it is a Supreme Court that Trump built. And, he is planning on them delivering on putting them in place to execute and to reinforce his agenda. So we should have no illusions at this point.
Yeah, and with the Supreme Court, like, they're on for life.
Right.
But one of them may retire in this time frame, in this administration, and then they got the courts like they already have it locked down. But if he puts one more, that's when I'm like, okay, that's going to be a wrap for everything. And the attack on voting rights, and look, they arrested a judge. Arrested a judge. You know when that happens? When a dictatorship. If you look at every dictatorship around the world, they go after the teachers first, the artists, the journalists, and the judges. Like that, her being arrested, I was looking at historically, has never happened. Because the one thing also about judges is it's their courtroom. And they and other judges have let ICE is not allowed to go inside. For the most part, they're not supposed to be inside. And people have fought for that to not happen, specifically when undocumented people are in front of a judge, right? So most judges would have released him anyway. But to arrest her and then to have the FBI, Cash Patel, put out that image, there's no way that's not a chilling thing that is not happening to judges. It's probably the first time they, as a judge, have ever been like, oh, this dude is sending people to arrest judges for one man in Wisconsin. No, that's the propaganda. That's the fear, and I think when people saw that, they were like, oh. But I also feel like people keep saying, oh, and then like, when are people going to be like, oh God, we have to come together, not hundreds of thousands, but multi-millions of people. I do agree with you, absolutely, that we're seeing the tide change a little bit. So we're dealing with
but we need to be sober. We need to be sober. A little bit is not sufficient, right? It's encouraging, but it is our job, your and mine, those of us who listening to this, who uphold radical politics to further clarify matters, right? Quote unquote, to the masses, and then push for a solid orientation on what is needed, right? Not trying to settle for what the system at present may give. And we have to really highlight and play up the contradictions that they are unleashing. And I don't think we are doing a good enough job of highlighting that. And one of the central pieces, I know you've heard me say, Rosa, but I'll re-articulate it. The Trumpflation and the Trump session should be considered, let me put it this way, should be considered one of the greatest gifts that he is going to offer us.
Right.
Because like it or not, most folks in this empire will respond far more to what happens to their bank account than what they will in terms of what happens in terms of the social injustice that they may see around people being, rounded up, arrested, even, killed and murdered. They will respond toward the economic piece. And then that is where he has made himself the most vulnerable with the tariffs and the other set of economic policies that he's putting in place. And we got to be prepared to step into the void to feel that, right? To engage in mutual aid work as a starting point, on a mass scale immediately, starting to think about that and put, forces in place which can help deliver much needed goods and services to the people, but also have the people lend their skill and expertise in response to kind of add on to a cycle of support and aid. That's what makes it mutual and not just charity. And then we need to start intervening. I think first, once it's like Mayday, we have to start pushing folks to engage and shut down activities, mass strikes, which bring critical parts of the economic functioning of this empire to a grinding halt, right? In particular, things that are going to hurt the pockets of the tech lords in particular, because that who's really has his ear, and that's who's really driving, the agenda right now to consolidate power in certain specific ways. We have to make them pay, right? And us moving from mass strike to general strike is one of the principal pieces. But we also need to get folks being very clear and mindful, about making the situation ungovernable, being prepared to engage in nonviolent, civil disobedience, but also utilizing all the tools in our toolkit, as working class and oppressed people to affect change. So it's encouraging, but we got to push it more. And for those of you who are saying, we need to sit this out. Nah, this is not a sit out moment, because it's not like they are going to leave, your little readout untouched or unscathed, right? Or leave you to just do your thing in some corner in isolation. It's not how this works, right? It's not how capitalism works, not how imperialism works. It has to dominate all spaces, all markets. That's where it's ultimately going to come from. So you can maybe spare yourself a day or two, a week, maybe even a year, but they're coming for you. So, and you don't need to be in a situation, like that old saying goes, that when they finally do come for you, there's going to be nobody left to support you, because you didn't speak up and act out earlier, when there could have been and should have been a mass of folks prepared to engage in acts of solidarity with each other to affect change. So we need to push harder, and everybody be mindful. They trying to induce fear, as you were saying, Rosa, very clearly, right? But it's us standing together is how we overcome that fear. And
Yeah.
it's around them wanting mass action so that they can declare, a national state of emergency and usher in the dictatorship. They're gonna do that anyway. Right. And it's best to take action to try to affect change before things are consolidated. And you have to deal with tanks, as opposed to right now, we could potentially affect folks who don't agree with his agenda, who are in those security forces, who may be willing to step out and not follow what they call unlawful orders. But rest assured, right, that he is doing a strategic, or they are doing a strategic purge of the Pentagon and of all these, national security agencies, to ensure that folks who are loyal to their agenda are put in place. But they haven't consolidated that yet. That is going to take a little bit more time. They are meeting, I think, some stiff resistance there. And we need to be very mindful and be very realistic. And we got to play a role to divide their forces in the same degree and to the same extent, if not greater, that they are attempting to divide ours.
Yeah, I think what you said at the beginning, obviously capitalism, as this country is a consumer, the economic health or whatever this country is consuming, Yep. Yeah. But, there's the macro of like, we know everything they are doing. Again, chaos, hitting at all different levels, basically saying, I don't care, like Pam Bondi, is she the Attorney General of the, right? The other day, she was basically saying, we need to stop whistleblowers, and we have to get, we need to know who the reporters are. And I want their notes, right? So she's talking about straight going after journalists. Then in the White House, when they have their briefings, they've done the seat arrangement where all the kind of left mainstream media is all the way in the back, and all in the front is right-wing media personalities. He has this crazy YouTube, I don't remember her name, but she is a YouTube conservative, like Trump lover. He brings her to the White House. She gives him a list of who should be fired, and he does that. I'm like, a YouTube, like, we got Elon Musk and now a YouTube influencer, and it's running this. But the micro, hold on. So the micro level that I'm thinking is, look, 125,000 federal government employees have been forced out, 125,000. And then now we're starting to see corporations cut. UPS, 20,000 jobs they're cutting. Walmart's cutting people. Target is cutting people. So these corporations are taking it like, oh, what? Not only we are going to get rid of people, but we're also going to stop any type of union organizing in our business. And so you have all these things on a collision course with then the economy. And as well, the New York Times is reporting yesterday that he wants to cut all safety nets. He's destroying public education. If your school or a young person in your life goes to public school, there's going to be no more after school programs. There's going to be no more tutoring. There's not going to be weekend programs. There's not going to be college counselors. Like, it's the macro now, like all the different types of tentacles. And then lastly, they are going to try to end Social Security. And Kali, I think when they go further, I believe that's when, especially most elder folks are going to be like, oh, hell no, because what they have done is shut down Social Security offices. Now they're saying these people, whether it's a rural community or another community that doesn't have access to get to the Social Security office when everything was being done online, he's closed all of them down. So you're starting to see pictures of people waiting 8-9 hours to get into the office, and you can see. And then lastly, people are coming to town halls, and not just Republican, Democrats. Everybody's like shut in. Well, it's good to see the people that voted for him. I'm not that empathetic towards them yet, but they are going hardcore in their town halls. And now we're seeing younger people going hard at the Democratic Party and those town halls. So like, it's confluencing together. And then obviously, like you said, inflation.
Mm-hmm.
People, rent, gas, food, all of that. That's when it's going to, like you said, have to be a sustained general strike in the country.
Absolutely. I mean, we need to see, unfortunately, all this pain that they are intentionally inflicting. We got to do some judo, here and seasons as an opportunity to build an alternative, economy and social system.
Yeah, and that's what I want to get to now.
Yeah, we are going to have to take care of our folks' need, and not just do it in a way that's just kind of piecemeal, right? To kind of tide us over for when things return back to normal, because the nature of how he is breaking these institutions, there will be no normal to return to.
Mm-hmm.
And I want folks to understand that it takes, a good amount of time, sometimes years, if not decades, to really fully develop and implement programs like Social Security, right? And when they eviscerate, like the Department of Education, you can't just construct that, put that back together again.
Yeah.
Let's assume that there's going to be, in this case, I don't, but let's assume that there'll be elections in 4 years, and the Democrats win on the promise of, bringing back the Department of Education and beefing up Social Security, doing more around, medical, Medicaid, Medicare, Obamacare, or come back with something universal, right? If they're smart, these are things that they would start gravitating on. Problem is they're not that smart. Well, it's not that they're stupid. Let me be clear. It's not that they're stupid. They are just committed to a neoliberal agenda, which is not going to enable them to try to discipline capital in any fundamental way, or to force it to make some concessions, right? As in what happened during the welfare state days. But we have to start, the piece, and I'm not trying to do this as a pub, but because I, fundamentally believe this, have been preaching this, anticipating exactly where we are now happening some years ago, and trying to reach anybody who would listen and say that we need to get organized, we need to get prepared. This is coming down. Well, now that moment is here. And the pieces that we're putting together in this build and fight formula are the critical elements of that. Starting with mutual aid, then moving, towards doing what we need to do in terms of securing, land, public land, private land, open land, pooling our resources collectively together, create new commons so that we can actually build and produce new food systems, more locally reliant and resilient food systems, not to just tide us over, but to totally re-articulate how that is done. I mean, building the alternative so it's more ecologically sustainable and manageable than the current kind of food system that we have now. That's kind of the second pillar. The third pillar is speaking to what we're talking about today, and that is, worker self-organization and self-management, right? And we have to organize everybody in all sectors of the class, and we have to get them to work not along lines of crafts or trade or sector of employment, but we need one big general union, similar to what the industrial workers of the world, were trying to build well over 100 years ago, right? And to do that in such a way that we engender the most solidarity amongst working people in any kind of community, so that the community then dictates what the terms of hiring, firing, wages, working conditions are, and don't leave that to individual employee. We have to make that a whole collective social piece that we all navigate, with each other. And then when we organize ourselves and have the power, we can then deal with these issues around the Trumpflation and the Trump recession in such a way that we can guarantee that there's, what people call full employment, because under our control, or more democratic control, we will just structure work in a way that, you don't have to work 40 hours. I don't have to work 40 hours to get my needs met, because we're distributing it up amongst ways that we work the necessary time to get the task done for the social need, but we spread it out so that everybody who needs employment, everybody who needs to access wages to be able to afford what they need in a market-based society such as the one we live in, can have access to that, and then we distribute it out broadly. Right, this is a critical piece that we're going to have to move to, because the unemployment, that they are enforcing is going to get real quick.
Real quick, yeah.
Go
ahead. No, go ahead. I have a clip though. Let me play
our argument is that if we go past deficit thinking, there are enough people in the United States and in the world who are actually engaged in socially reproductive labor concept we'll get into more, that we shouldn't be working from a deficit. Our real problem is not numbers, as in we lack people doing things that we all need to survive, right? The almost any community you can think of, there are folks doing some form of food security work with community gardens or community supported agriculture, small farms, that's going on. There's mutual aid stuff that has exploded in the last 15 to 20 years everywhere, right? Folks doing, food distribution, clothes distributions, aid distributions of medicines. And we're talking about them, people doing this autonomously, which is fundamentally kind of big borrowing and stealing, if you would, to supply these goods.
Yeah, so that clip from Kali around deficit thinking, like you said in the clip, we have the numbers. That's not the problem. I also think the Black left, particularly, is in complete shambles. And I think there has to be new ways of doing this work that also makes it clear and attracts young people to the work, right? So, but again, if you could tell the audience what you talk about, deficit thinking, and how folks can root that out.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna go. Let's start with where you put us. It is a reality that the Black left and the left in general is in shambles. Right, we do not have the organizations we had 30, 40 years ago, right? And the political parties we had 30, 40 years ago. The benefit of those was because they were structured, right? People could come together and make collective decisions and do deployment of resources and human beings to say, you go work here, right? Put in however many hours, this person is going to go work there, right? And then have it planned out. You do not necessarily have that kind of capacity in the here and now, just given where the left is, right? The fragmentation that is happening. But what has emerged, right, over that period of time is that you have really an explosion of folks who are doing work in all of these different areas that I was talking about.
Yeah.
So our problem is not that there aren't people doing like farming work of different scales. It's not the problem. It's not the problem that we don't have enough people who are actually, doing care work, right, as the basis of mutual aid and solidarity, taking care of children, taking care of elderly, trans folks and folks who are supporting, the oftentimes the kind of hormonal treatment, right, that folks need to be healthy, to be whole, to be normal. folks are finding ways to work around the market limitations that have been imposed to give people what they need. So that is going on. Now we needed to scale up even more, right, to really rival and displace and if not eliminate, kind of the capitalist market, based upon commodity exchange, and have that be substituted, with, use value exchange, right? Direct mediation based upon need, right? That we got a long way to go to get to that point. But this notion that like we don't know where to start or we don't have enough people, that's the deficit thinking. And it's to look around you and be aware in your community, of what's going on. Who has that little, garden plot, right? Who's doing that on the corner or at the end of this building? How do I be in relationship with them, learn skills so that if I don't know how to farm, I can do it, right? Start another project on like another vacant lot or in my backyard, right? Or do a hydroponic, aquaponic, setup, right? Mm-hmm. And so the level of skill sharing to be able to scale up, it's a organizing problem. We're not coordinated in what we're doing, right? And we don't necessarily need to create like these broad kind of deep centralized bodies and to do it, as opposed to just being coordinated, being in constant conversation with each other, and figuring out, hey, if you're going to, by way of example, if you're going to grow a certain amount of tomatoes and have some that it might be, in excess of what you can use, I'm going to grow a certain amount of kale, and I'm not going to be able to consume all of this. Can I trade some kale for tomato, vice versa, right? And now imagine us planning that out democratically and moving it up to scale, right? We could have in most communities, some urban communities may be challenged off the top, but in most communities, we could have, at least a sufficient enough basis that folks would not be, caloric deprived, i.e. wouldn't starve, wouldn't hurt. Now, it might not be all the different things we are accustomed to by regularly going to the supermarket and getting all that processed food, right? But it's a shift that we are going to have to make that's going to be dictated by most of the processed food may not be on the counters anyway.
I know that's
so the tariffs, right?
Yeah, I straight up went food shopping at Walmart, and first to go into a Walmart and hardly anybody there in the middle of the afternoon, I was like, oh. And then as me and just start on every aisle, all you saw was people like, oh my God, it was like $5 last week. It's $8. Like everybody in there was tight. You could see like moms like, you get no candy. We don't have money for that kind of thing. Right. But the shelves are like straight empty, and I was just like you said, it's all coming together. I want to play this clip of you talking about food production.
It's not a question of whether enough food is being produced. We already produce enough food just in the United States alone.
The United States throws away enough food.
Thank you. Just where I was about to go to. So it's a matter of who owns and controls the means of production and how those who own and control the means of production distribute it for a profit rather than for need. Mm-hmm. And we are struggling, and what this program is about is to start producing for need to enhance that struggle, but also to prepare our people in our communities for some hard times ahead. And so what we have been warning about, anybody's listening to me the last maybe 10 years have been warning that a movement like the MAGA movement was.
I mean, that's says it all there. We throw enough food away. Like, it's kind of like, why are there even unhoused people when in every city there are thousands of apartments that are not going to get rented? What does it mean now, like, for those folks that have student loans? I encourage everybody to join the debt collective. Really, really join, especially if you student loans. But last week, the Department of Education said it was going to transfer student loans that were like 60 days past due to a credit agency. I think people, I mean, at least I thought it would take months. I got a straight letter yesterday from some credit agency company that's talking about my student loan is 60 days plus, which I'm like, yeah, so are 40 million other people. But already they're sending not credit agencies, collections after people. Where it's been, nobody's really had to pay their student loan for 5 years, but other people like me on the income-based repayment. And now it's like your entire student loan is being taken out of the Department of Education to collections. And part of that is why folks get kickbacks on that. And that's what his administration is doing, right? And this idea that, all student loan debt would be canceled, that's a privilege that other people don't have. Well, people with student loans can't even afford to buy a house. They can't afford certain things. So what are we going to do? Like, I can't stress about it, but I was just like, again, the quickness of what they said last week to then someone like me means millions of people this week are going to get those letters, and it's going to cause stress, and stress leads to physical breakdown. So, Kali, before we let you go, if you can speak to first a couple of things that people should be doing right now, and then speak to why it's important that people take care of themselves, because y'all, this stress is going to kill a lot of people. Like,
already is.
Yeah. So if you could speak to that.
Well, look, I'm going to reiterate a piece that we have been putting out, right? It's the summary of the practices of position that we've been articulating around this build and fight formula, right? And if you don't mind, I'm gonna pull it up on my screen and just read some sections of it, right? Because I think it's important, right? I hear people, questioning what to do, and I want to argue, folks, that a lot of what we need to do is right in front of us, right? And some reorientation and a deeper level of organizing to build, relationships with the folks in our immediate surroundings and community is a critical piece. And so I'm gonna start with the mutual aid, and I'm gonna, if you can find this on our website, right, the Cooperation Jackson website. You can find it on all our social media. I'll put it on my social media promotion on Twitter or Facebook, Instagram, so you can look for it there in case this goes by too fast. But, number one, organize mutual aid on a communal scale to address the initial economic shocks that are coming, right? This was written in November, so they're here now.
Yeah.
To prepare for the increasing number of national disasters and to better address the day-to-day ravages of the capitalist system that produce systemic homelessness and hunger in our communities on a daily basis. Now that part, we put that there to just say that, clearly he is changing things and they are changing things, but the way things were before were not ideal and were not perfect in any form or fashion, right? And so we need to be mindful of that, because, it's part of this fight that we need to be clear. And why I was saying earlier at the beginning of our discussion today, why we need to push folks, because there's some folks who just want to go back to the good old days before Trump, during the Biden administration, right? By way of example, as if there was somehow a rule of law that was fully respected. If that was the case, there would not have been a genocide that he committed in Palestine. So it was not as egregious as what we're living through now. But we should have no nostalgia about the Trump days. About the Obama days or Biden days, whatever. No nostalgia, right?
It's been leading to this moment.
Right. They were insufficient. And truth be told, Bush, Obama, those two in particular, laid a lot of the foundations for the things that are being pulled now with how they use, both of them use executive orders and executive powers and expanded the power of the presidency in such a degree that it just created an opportunity that was already ready made for Trump or anybody like Trump to step into and then execute governance in the way that he's doing now. So just be mindful of that. Now the second,
we have to wrap up just because the next show starts at 12. So yeah, no,
I'm gonna go through just so the next piece: engage in collective food production and exchange, utilize and claim all of the lands that can be employed to meet social need, including the decommodification of corporate lands and the democratization of public lands. Engage in militant worker self-organization, build class-conscious cooperatives and trade unions, and have them coordinate the production and distribution of the essential goods and services we need to survive and thrive. That's a critical one for this day, thinking about May Day.
Right.
Engage in community production through tool lending libraries, makerspace, and the adoption of digital fabrication production techniques to break our dependency on industrial monopolies and the byproducts of their wasteful methods, right? And this is a critical one. And I'm going to end on this. Well, I'm going to end on the next one. This is a critical one because a large part of what Doge and those folks are being able to do and what they're promising is a new form of governance, which is going to be, governance by AI. We need to resist that.
Yeah.
Right? We need to be forward thinking and resist that because that's the back end of what they are planning in terms of what they're doing with all this harm and firing all these people and what they're going to do with labor replacement. This is it. So we need to engage in the development, promotion, and mass migration to open source technologies to break the bonds of surveillance capitalism, the growing concentration of quote unquote cloud capital, and the monopoly powers of the tech lords. To greater
you don't have to go yet. I want you to finish up. But what I do want to interject is a couple weeks ago, I read on Business Weekly, Walmart is about to go into 600 of their stores and make it fully AI.
Fully AI.
There's no longer any cashiers. What you're probably going to see in all of these retail, either they're going to shut down or they're going to AI it to the point where, and I've seen it at airports and maybe you have, like now in some airports, when you go to get your snack or whatever, it's like a little, what's that? Not a turnstile, but
it's a little camera with the scanner. They do the biometric.
Yeah. All you do is you go in, you pick what you want. It's scanning it. You go pay. They have one person in there just in case something happens. But when I was talking to the sister, she's like, we used to have 6 people. Now it's 3 of us. Right. So now Walmart, which is, if not the biggest private employer, particularly for African-American Latinos, we're going to see probably hundreds of thousands, even more on, using the AI technology. And in fact, Grace Lee Boggs and her husband talked about this automation in the 1970s, and it's here. So that's surveillance capitalism, right? And like, if anybody thinks they don't know who you are, your phone, remember that Doge put all of this information together on Americans where they live. They took all the technology and made millions, I'm sure, of lists of every person. Your cell phone is now the surveillance, right? And then obviously
we need to look at how they've been tracking certain folks, migrant folks, and picking them up.
Yes,
right? That's the government using the services of Palantir, one of the tech bros, right? Who came out of the PayPal mafia, a company that he owns that they've hooked up that's doing this massive data mining that does the tracking of all of our patterns. That is what they're now utilizing to go after folks and be coming after you for your political views and shopping habits and viewing views, right? On what you view on YouTube or on your cable news network to deem it unpatriotic, un-American content. So this one is a critical one, y'all. A major piece that we need to start adopting right now, because we become, all myself included, too dependent upon the Facebooks and the Apple phones and nothing, fully knowing all of the surveillance work that all those things have been doing, for decades already, and how advanced it already is without even moving to that piece. And the other thing to be mindful of, all this Trump talking about he's going to reindustrialize the United States. Don't believe any word of that. Even if those jobs come back, like in the auto factories,
Yeah,
they
they're
will be
not coming
automated.
back.
Right.
Yeah, they're not
They
coming
will be
back.
automated. So we need to get ready. And the last two pieces, Rosa, to close us out in terms of what people can do, start organizing self-defense networks in your community.
Get your passport if you have it.
Yeah, make sure you definitely get that. Those of you who can get some access to that. And then the last piece is in order to coordinate all this on a community level, we need our own democratic institutions. So the people's assemblies, people's councils, whatever town halls, we need to make that front and center of how we are going to engage in doing all of this kind of work and to serve the basic needs of the people. There's viable things, y'all, that we can and must do. It's not a question of I would argue, it's not a question of what to do. It's a question of how do you take the time to build the relationships, to be in direct dialogue, communication, and relationship with the people in your community to make these things happen for the betterment of your community and to withstand the shocks of what's coming down.
Yeah, and around lastly, the social media communication. I mean, we've seen what's already been happening, but again, reading an article last week, Zuckerberg fired his entire fact-checking team.
Right.
Got rid of it, right? So going back to ways of communicating outside of social media, especially our generation, we created those spaces. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with going and making a magazine, or obviously artists and all of that. But people have to be aware, like, this is what we're talking about, grassroots organizing at the end of the day. We're talking about knowing so many of our people who have created amazing organizations. The nonprofits are breaking. I mean, the amount of them that have been closed, but we became too independent on the nonprofit industrial complex and the American electoral political project. So everything we do has to harken back to grassroots organizing. So, Kali, I want to let everybody know, Jackson Rising Redo, Lessons on Building the Future and the Present. It was edited by Kali and Matt Meyer, and the foreword by Richard Wolf, who is a former professor at UMass Amherst. In fact, I hit him up and he said in a couple weeks he'll come on, because I was watching him on Democracy Now! And he just really broke it down. So this is the book, y'all. Y'all should get this. It's practical. It has essays, how basically Cooperation Jackson, but not just that, really uplifting that kind of in the ground local work. And Kali, we got 1 minute. Can you let people know where they can find you and Cooperation Jackson?
Yeah, so thank you again, Rosa, for putting this all together. I think it's looked lovely. Definitely encourage everybody to check out the full complement of the program. I know I am. Tune in, listen, learn, and support our folks who are coming on. I want to just make a last minute pitch for folks to check out our Build and Fight Formula series. It's the second Tuesday of every month. The next one, the fourth session, which is going to be about worker self-organization and self-management, and a push towards, moving from mass strike to general strike. That's going to be the focus. That's going to be the 13th of May. It's at 7 p.m. East Coast time, 4 p.m. Pacific Coast time. You can follow that live at our Jackson Rising YouTube page. So tune in to that, and you can find all of the core materials either by subscribing to our newsletter, The Cooperative Way. One just came out this morning around May Day, or you can look all of this up at our website at cooperationjackson.org and on our social media, which is X is at Cooperation JXN. Instagram is also Cooperation JXN, capital JXN. And on Facebook is just Cooperation Jackson, our main page, and to stay abreast of what we're putting out, almost on a daily basis about the work that we're doing, the ideas that we're promoting, and the ways that we are trying to connect with folks, either through the People's Network of Land and Liberation, which we helped to launch some years ago, or the broader network of practices associated with that. So stay tuned.
Yeah. So everybody, I'm trying to grow this show. My Cash App and Venmo are going to scroll. I'm going until 7 p.m. You could see. No, don't do that. Sorry, that's my next guest. Look, that's you or me.
That's me. we have the folks are hitting this up.
But like I said, the Cash App and Venmo, trying to grow the show. We're going till 7 p.m. Look at the flyers. We have incredible guests. Like I said, these are my comrades. At 12 in about 3 minutes, we'll be back to the next segment. So I have to shut this down and Instagram. I'll be right back. The next segment is Omowale Adewale with Liberation Farm up here in upstate New York, and Dequi, wife and new African radical Black feminist, who was with our help to free Sekou Odinga, may he rest in freedom. I know that our PPs are looking down at us, and so we're losing so many folks, y'all. We're like, our generation is losing the people that brought us to where we're at, So again, thank you. Follow Cooperation Jackson. I'll be back at 12 p.m. in 2 minutes. Kali Akuno, co-director and co-founder of Cooperation Jackson, Mississippi. Thank you for supporting the show, and thank you for being on with us as we kick it off.
All right, Rosa.
Love you, comrade.
Love you. Take care now.
All right.
All right.
Hey, fam, real quick, I'm about to switch it up. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much. I am going to the next segment at 12. On Instagram, I can only do this for an hour. So please share. And legit, I'm going to be back now in about 60 seconds.